Okay, so in this lesson, we are going to be discussing subobject mode, and how we can use that to manipulate objects. So let's create another object again. Start off with a cube. And we have a cube here. So what is a subobject? Well, if you right click and hold on the object, you'll see this menu around here. We have object mode, which we are currently in right now. If you let go when you're on there. We have edge, vertex, vertex face, face, multi, UV. Those are the other types of subobjects that we can work on. Notice with UV and with any other menu that you see that has a little arrow like this, if you hover on it, you get more options at that point. The main ones we're going to talk about today, though, are edge, vertex, and face. So let's start off with vertex first. So the smallest increment of subobject that we can modify in an object is a vertex. So if I draw a box around this by left click, drag, and hold, then let go, you'll see that it selects that vertex and it's highlighted yellow. These other vertices that are on the object, you can see that they're kind of like a magenta color, but when I hover close to it, it turns red. That would mean that I'm going to select that if I click near there. But vertex are basically the smallest thing that you can modify. So we can move this object around. A vertex basically is a single point in space, and it doesn't really have any scale or any size. So if we were to try to rotate this, nothing's going to happen. Or if we try to scale it. But if we have multiple of them selected, so let's say I hold down the Shift button and select another subobject, you can see that now I have two objects selected. I can move it just like before. And if I go in to try to scale, I can now scale them apart from each other. See that I can't scale them in towards each other because they're on the same plane already. I can't scale them up and down, but I can scale them closer together. So if I select another vertex here, you'll see that I can scale them together this way. I can scale them together this way, although I can't scale it vertically. So I can add one more to the selection, and then now we can start manipulating it in all three directions. And this also works with the rotation for what we were discussing before, along with the scale. So I can rotate all these together. Okay, let's look at the edge mode. Edge mode gives you the ability to select edges and basically be able to manipulate it, scale, rotate, or position. Here again, you have to be careful on like scaling. If you are completely flat on a single axis, it won't scale. But if you have space to scale, it will let you scale. And we can select multiple of them by holding Shift and modify it. If you want to, let's say I selected this, but I didn't want to select that one, you can hold Control, and you can see that it switches to minus sign on the cursor itself. So when I click, it's going to deselect. And I can modify. And to get back to the normal shape, if you're wondering, I'm just pushing Control Z to undo. Okay, so now we have faces. Now selecting faces, I can do all the same manipulations that we were before. So those are the main sub-object modes that we can affect and manipulate. And it gives us a lot of power to create shapes from these basic types of objects that we have. So if we went into the object here and added subdivisions, for example, let's say we wanted more on the height, we added 3. So we can select the edges and create some sort of shape like this, and or on top, create something like that. So it gives us a lot of power to start manipulating the shape, and we can add more subdivisions along the object. But something to note is that if we start manipulating it, let's say we got something like that, and we go back into object mode, and try to add or take away divisions at this point, it changes the shape of the object. So we need to be able to modify once we've added a shape to this, be able to modify the geometry by adding more geometry to it so that we can modify the shape. You'll see that we have inside of the modeling menu set, we have a whole bunch of options that we can work with. There's a few that I really like working a lot with that I'll show you in this list, and in the future, if we need more, you can look more. But look at the tooltips down here too. When you're going to select it, it tells you kind of what the tool is going to do. But let's look at the Insert Edge Loop tool. Basically, if I click on that, I can add another edge loop of edges perpendicular to whatever edge I click on. So it gives me the ability to add more geometry so that I can modify the shape and model it, adjusting it to look like whatever I want it to look like. So, let's see. Is there anything else that I want? I mean, I use the pen to polygon tool a lot, but in this case, the way we have the object, it's not going to be very useful. In the future, I will definitely show you that, though. Multi-cut tool is pretty useful, although be careful with it. For the most part, you want to stay with quads throughout your whole object. So if I'm going to use the multi-cut tool, it lets me draw edges. Oops. Go. So you can do that and then push enter and on the numeric keypad, and then it will finalize that shape, and it basically added it exactly where I clicked onto it. But if I were to go in with the multi-cut tool, you could see a lot of times the previous tool is selected on your toolbar here, so you can select it. If I go across like this, I'm creating triangles now, and that could be an issue depending on what I'm doing. So I would be careful with that, because now we have 3 triangles in our scene that we didn't have before, where everything was quads. There are ways to fix this. So if I look at this one's pretty easy to fix. I can just select that and push delete. And now I have a 4-sided object, so it's a quad instead of a triangle. This one here, if we look at it, we're going to have a bit more trouble to try to fix it. So we have to go through and add a whole bunch more edges to be able to get this to be a quad. Also notice on this one here, when we affected it, we made a triangle here, but we also made a 5-sided, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5-sided object. And that can definitely be an issue. 3-sideds are okay, 5-sideds are pretty bad. So if we do something like that, now we brought this to 1, 2, 3, 4. And 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's 2 triangles here. With the 2 triangles, if I delete that edge, right there, now I have everything back to quads. And again, depending on what you're doing, having everything to be exactly quads might not necessarily be very important, but in a lot of instances, especially if you're going to deform and modify your object, it's going to be very important. So keep that into account. Okay, that's it for this lesson. We'll see you in the next one.